My name is Savannah. Everyone thought I had the perfect life, successful husband, dream home, happiness, but the truth, my marriage was a lie. My husband betrayed me, his mistress mocked me, and I was drowning in silence, until I stood in court, and finally spoke my truth. That's the day everything changed. My name is Savannah. Looking back now, my life feels like a story someone might watch on a late-night drama, shaking their heads, whispering, "How could this happen?" But it wasn't fiction. It was my truth. I grew up in a quiet Midwestern town, small houses with white fences, a main street that closed by 9, and summers filled with the sound of cicadas. My world was simple: school, home, helping my mom, listening to my dad's stories, and escaping into books that told me there was a bigger life out there waiting for me. I dreamed of it, but my reality kept me grounded. When I met Aaron, everything changed. He was unlike anyone in my town. Sharp suits, quick wit, a smile that could command a room. He had just begun his career as a lawyer in New York City, already gaining a reputation for being brilliant and relentless. To me, he felt like the doorway to the life I had always imagined, but never thought I'd touch. Our courtship was fast, almost like something out of a novel. Long phone calls, surprise visits, and that thrilling sense that maybe fate had finally noticed me. When he asked me to marry him, I didn't hesitate. I believed he was my future. Moving to New York was overwhelming. The city's energy pulsed through every street, and for the first time, I felt both invisible and alive. Aaron's world was larger than anything I had known: lofty offices, grand parties, conversations filled with names I had only read in magazines. I tried to adapt quietly, fitting myself into the spaces his life created. Aaron thrived. His confidence was intoxicating. In court, he could twist a case with the sheer power of his argument. At home, he was affectionate, though often distracted. I admired him deeply. I thought, if only I could be as strong, as certain, as untouchable. The first few years were good. Our apartment felt warm, our dinners filled with laughter, and I began to think, this is it. I found stability, love, and a home where I belong, but I didn't realize how easy it was to lose yourself when someone else's identity is so much larger than yours. While Aaron climbed higher, winning case after case, I slowly disappeared into the background. My days became a rhythm of waiting for him to come home, waiting for him to share his world with me, waiting for my own life to feel significant. Still, I told myself this was love. This was marriage. And I believed that one day, in his victories, I would find my own. But life has a way of testing illusions. The storm began quietly, with a new partner joining Aaron's firm. Her name was Riley. Riley's entrance into our lives was subtle at first, almost forgettable. Aaron mentioned her name one evening over dinner. His voice, casual, as he spoke about a new partner at the firm. "She's sharp, Savannah," he said, sipping his wine. "Ambitious, smart. One of the best hires we've made." I smiled politely, told him I was glad he had good support, and moved on. Little did I know, that single mention was the first ripple in what would become a storm. Days turned into weeks, and Riley's name kept surfacing. Aaron, who rarely praised anyone, seemed almost eager to talk about her. "Riley handled the client beautifully today," he'd say, or "You should have seen Riley's presentation." Even the senior partners were impressed. Each time he said her name, a knot tightened in my stomach. I wanted to dismiss it, to tell myself it was nothing more than professional admiration. But something deep inside whispered otherwise. The first time I met Riley was at a firm dinner. She was striking, not just beautiful, but the kind of person who carried herself like she belonged anywhere. Confident, articulate, with a laugh that could fill a room. People gravitated toward her, and Aaron was no exception. I watched them talk across the table, the way his eyes lit up when she spoke. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was being insecure. But it was hard to ignore the subtle current between them. Soon, Riley's presence extended beyond the firm. She started visiting our home under the guise of late-night work sessions. At first I welcomed her, polite and gracious. After all, I was Aaron's wife. What reason did I have to feel threatened? But each time she sat in our living room, papers spread across the coffee table, laughing with Aaron over strategy, I felt myself shrinking further into the background. One evening, as I stood in the kitchen, stirring pasta, I could hear them from the living room. Their voices overlapped, legal jargon, stories of clients, bursts of laughter. It was a sound that used to belong to us. When Aaron finally joined me for dinner, he said, "Riley has such vision. She's going places, Savannah. I want to help her." His words were meant to sound noble, but they cut me deeply. I forced a smile, but inside I screamed, "And who will help me?" Nights became longer. Aaron stayed out late, claiming court preparations or dinners with colleagues. When he did come home, he smelled faintly of a perfume I didn't own. I noticed the way he checked his phone more often. sometimes stepping into the balcony to take calls in hushed tones. Once, I caught a glimpse of the name glowing on the screen. Riley. He answered quickly, his voice lowering, his laughter soft in a way I hadn't heard in months. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, questions tearing at me. Was I losing him? Or had I already lost him and just didn't want to admit it? I remembered the girl I used to be, the one who believed love meant security, that marriage meant permanence. But now, in the silence of our apartment, all I felt was the echo of a bond unraveling. Riley wasn't just Aaron's partner anymore. She was becoming a shadow in our marriage, one I could no longer ignore. It started with little things, the kind you could almost dismiss if you weren't paying attention. Aaron stopped asking me about my day. He used to come home, loosen his tie, and sit across from me at the kitchen counter, listening as I talked about the books I was reading, or the neighbors I'd met. Now his questions were his eyes drifting to his phone, his mind somewhere else. When I reached out to hold his hand during dinner, sometimes he'd pull away without even noticing. I told myself marriages go through phases. People get busy, they get tired. But late at night, when I sat alone on the couch waiting for him to come home, I began to wonder if this was more than just a phase. One Friday evening, I decided to surprise him. I made his favorite dinner, roasted chicken with rosemary, mashed potatoes, and the apple pie he loved so much. I set the table, lit candles, even played soft jazz in the background. Hours passed. The food grew cold. When he finally walked in close to midnight, his tie loosened and his hair slightly out of place, I could smell the faint trace of alcohol, and that same unfamiliar perfume. "Savannah, you're still awake?" he asked, almost startled to see me waiting. "I wanted to have dinner together," I said, my voice shaking more than I intended. He sighed, rubbing his forehead. "I told you, we had a late meeting. Riley and I." He stopped, realizing too late that saying her name so quickly would sting. I nodded silently, gathering the plates without another word. That night, I cried quietly in the bathroom, biting my hand to keep the sobs from reaching him. I didn't want him to know how much I was breaking. The cracks became harder to hide as weeks went on. I noticed changes in him: new cologne, shirts I hadn't picked, a distant look in his eyes, even when he was right beside me. One afternoon while doing laundry, I found a receipt tucked into his pocket. A dinner for two at a restaurant we had never visited together. My hands trembled as I read it. The date was the same night I had sat alone at home, pie growing cold on the table. Confrontation scared me. I wasn't sure I was ready to hear the truth. I already knew deep down, but the silence was killing me, suffocating me in ways I couldn't explain. One night, I gathered the courage. As he walked through the door, I said, "Aaron, are you seeing someone?" He froze, his hand still on the doorknob. For a moment, the room was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. Then he laughed, too quickly, too sharply. "Savannah, don't be ridiculous. You know how much I work with Riley. That's all it is, work." His words were firm, but his eyes betrayed him. They didn't meet mine. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to cling to the hope that I was wrong. But deep down, I felt the glass shatter. Once cracks appear, no matter how much you try to smooth them over, the pieces never fit the same again. After that confrontation, Aaron became more careful. Or maybe I became more observant. He started locking his phone, something he had never done before. He claimed it was for confidential work matters, but I knew better. His late nights grew longer, sometimes not coming home until dawn. He'd walk in with an excuse ready on his lips, but the excuses felt rehearsed, shallow, like lines from a poorly written script. One Saturday afternoon, he said he needed to go to the office. I nodded, pretending to believe him. But the moment he left, my heart told me to follow. My hands shook as I grabbed my coat and hailed a cab, trailing the familiar black sedan he drove. He didn't go to the office. Instead, he pulled into a small boutique hotel tucked between high-rise buildings. I sat frozen in the back seat of the cab, watching as Riley stepped out of another car and met him at the entrance. They didn't look like colleagues. They looked like lovers. He touched her arm gently, a gesture I hadn't felt from him in months, and together they disappeared through the glass doors. My throat closed, and tears blurred the city around me. I wanted to scream, to run into that hotel and demand answers, but my legs wouldn't move. Instead, I gave the driver a new address. Back in our apartment, I collapsed onto the couch, hugging a pillow as if it could absorb the pain ripping through me. Hours passed before Aaron returned. His tie loosened, his hair slightly tousled. He smiled faintly, as if nothing were wrong. "Long day," he muttered, kissing my forehead absent-mindedly. I stared at him, my mind screaming with the image of him and Riley together, but my lips refused to speak. The silence burned. Over the next few days, my world shifted. Food lost its taste, sleep abandoned me, and the apartment I once considered home became a prison. I began noticing details I had ignored before: the way his voice softened when he said Riley's name, the way he checked his phone with a hidden smile, the faint scent of her perfume clinging to his shirts. Each discovery was another dagger. And yet I carried them quietly, afraid that speaking the truth out loud would make it too real. One evening, I confided in Victor, an old friend from college who had become a lawyer too. We met at a small cafe far from Aaron's circle. "Savannah, you look pale," Victor said gently, concern etched across his face. I broke down, telling him everything: the late nights, the phone calls, the hotel. He listened, his jaw tightening. When I finished, he leaned forward. "Savannah, you can't ignore this. If he's betraying you, you need to protect yourself. Emotionally, legally, both." His words were sharp, but filled with care. I nodded. The weeks that followed felt like walking through a fog I couldn't escape. Aaron and I coexisted in the same apartment, but we were no longer living together. We were strangers passing by in silence. He left early for work, came home late. And when he was present, his attention was elsewhere. Sometimes I caught him smiling at his phone, his thumb brushing across the screen, as if the words written there mattered more than my existence. I wanted to scream, to rip the phone from his hands and demand the truth. But fear kept me quiet. Fear of what he would say. Fear of the finality of hearing it out loud. One night, I gathered the courage to ask again. We were sitting at the dining table, plates of untouched food between us. "Aaron," I said softly, "is there something you need to tell me? About you and Riley?" His fork clattered against the plate, his jaw tightening. "Savannah, I told you before, nothing is going on. Stop imagining things." His voice was firm, almost angry, but his eyes gave him away. They flickered with guilt, with hesitation. "Then why are you never home?" I pressed, my voice trembling. "Why do you smell like her perfume? Why do I find receipts for dinners we've never shared?" He slammed his hand against the table, the sound sharp enough to make me flinch. "Enough, you don't understand the pressure I'm under at work. Riley is my partner. That's it. If you can't trust me, maybe the problem isn't Mitsu." His words cut deeper than any knife. I sat in silence, tears pooling in my eyes, while he stormed out of the room. That night, I realized something important. Aaron wasn't just lying to me. He was lying to himself too. The next day I found myself in the library, desperate for a distraction, but even surrounded by shelves of books, I couldn't escape the weight pressing on my chest. My phone buzzed with a message from Victor. "Are you okay? I've been thinking about what you told me." I hesitated, then typed back, "No, I'm not okay. He's lying. And I don't know what to do." Victor's reply came quickly. "Savannah, you need to be prepared. If this continues, you'll need proof. Don't let him manipulate you into silence." His words haunted me. Proof as much as I didn't want to admit it. I knew he was right. That night, I searched Aaron's jacket pockets, his briefcase, even his laptop bag when he was asleep. My hands shook with guilt and fear, but I needed answers. In his wallet, tucked behind a stack of business cards, I found a hotel key card. My breath caught. The name of the hotel was the same one I had seen weeks earlier, the one where Riley had walked in beside him. My chest tightened as if the walls of the room were closing in. He wasn't just lying. He was living a double life, and I was the ghost haunting it. Lying beside him that night, listening to his steady breathing, I realized the whispers and lies had already consumed us. Our marriage was no longer built on love, but on secrets, and secrets, I knew, never stayed buried forever. The weeks that followed felt like walking through a fog I couldn't escape. Aaron and I coexisted in the same apartment, but we were no longer living together. We were strangers, passing by in silence. He left early for work, came home late, and when he was present, his attention was elsewhere. Sometimes I caught him smiling at his phone, his thumb brushing across the screen as if the words written there mattered more than my existence. I wanted to scream, to rip the phone from his hands, and demand the truth, but fear kept me quiet. Fear of what he would say. Fear of the finality of hearing it out loud. One night, I gathered the courage to ask again. We were sitting at the dining table, plates of untouched food between us. "Aaron," I said softly, "is there something you need to tell me? About you and Riley?" His fork clattered against the plate, his jaw tightening. "Savannah, I told you before, nothing is going on. Stop imagining things." His voice was firm, almost angry, but his eyes gave him away. They flickered with guilt, with hesitation. "Then why are you never home?" I pressed, my voice trembling. "Why do you smell like her perfume? Why do I find receipts for dinners we've never shared?" He slammed his hand against the table, the sound sharp enough to make me flinch. "Enough. You don't understand the pressure I'm under at work. Riley is my partner. That's it. If you can't trust me, Maybe the problem isn't Mitsu. His words cut deeper than any knife. I sat in silence, tears pooling in my eyes, while he stormed out of the room. That night, I realized something important. Aaron wasn't just lying to me. He was lying to himself too. The next day I found myself in the library, desperate for a distraction. But even surrounded by shelves of books, I couldn't escape the weight pressing on my chest. My phone buzzed with a message from Victor. "Are you okay? I've been thinking about what you told me." I hesitated, then typed back, "No, I'm not okay. He's lying, and I don't know what to do." Victor's reply came quickly. "Savannah, you need to be prepared. If this continues, you'll need proof. Don't let him manipulate you into..." Silence. His words haunted me, proof as much as I didn't want to admit it. I knew he was right. That night, I searched Aaron's jacket pockets, his briefcase, even his laptop bag when he was asleep. My hands shook with guilt and fear, but I needed answers. In his wallet, tucked behind a stack of business cards, I found a hotel key card. My breath caught. The name of the hotel was the same one I had seen weeks earlier, the one where Riley had walked in beside him. My chest tightened as if the walls of the room were closing in. He wasn't just lying, he was living a double life, and I was the ghost haunting it. Lying beside him that night, listening to his steady breathing, I realized the whispers and lies had already consumed us. Our marriage was no longer built on love, but on secrets and secrets. I knew, never stayed buried, forever. The key card burned in my hand like a confession he hadn't spoken aloud. For hours I sat on the edge of our bed staring at it, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might break through my ribs. Proof it was the one thing I had both dreaded and needed. When Aaron stirred beside me, I slipped the card back into his wallet, careful not to wake him. I lay awake the rest of the night, my mind replaying every smile he had given Riley, every lie he had told me, every touch he no longer offered me. By morning, something inside me had shifted. I wasn't just the quiet, obedient wife anymore. I was a woman betrayed, and betrayal had a way of igniting strength even when you didn't feel it. That evening, when Aaron said he had another late meeting, I didn't argue. I kissed his cheek, told him to work hard, and watched him leave. Then I followed. My hands trembled as I drove through the city. Every red light a reminder that I was about to confirm the truth I already knew. I parked across from the hotel and waited, my stomach churning. Minutes felt like hours until I finally saw him. He stepped out of his car, straightened his tie, and within moments, Riley appeared. She looked radiant, her eyes lighting up when she saw him. Without hesitation, Aaron leaned in and kissed her. Not a quick kiss, not something you could excuse as a mistake, but a kiss filled with passion, with intimacy. My breath caught, tears streaming down my face, as I pressed myself lower in the driver's seat. My world collapsed in that instant. Everything I had believed in our vows, our love, our future shattered like glass hitting concrete. I sat there frozen, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. They disappeared inside, and I was left with the image burned into my mind forever. I don't remember how I drove home. The streets blurred, lights smeared across my vision. And by the time I reached our apartment, I felt hollow. I walked through the door, the silence of our home, mocking me. The pictures on the wall, our wedding photo, our vacations, our smiles suddenly felt like lies hanging in frames. Hours later, Aaron returned. He kissed me on the forehead as if nothing were wrong, as if he hadn't just destroyed me. "Long night," he muttered, loosening his tie. I stared at him, my lips pressed together so tightly they hurt. Part of me wanted to scream, to throw the truth in his face. But another part of me whispered, "Not yet." He didn't know I had seen. He didn't know I had proof. And maybe, just maybe, that ignorance would give me the advantage I needed. That night, I pulled out my journal and wrote down everything. The time, the place, the kiss, the keycard. If Aaron wanted to live in lies, then I would live in truth. Quietly, carefully, I would build my case, because sooner or later, he would have to face what he had done. The days that followed felt like a performance where I was forced to play the role of the faithful wife while inside I was breaking piece by piece. Aaron went about his routine as if nothing had changed. He left early, came home late, and carried the faint scent of perfume that wasn't mine. But now, every glance, every word, every sigh of his, was evidence in my mind. I started paying attention to details I had once ignored. Receipts left on the counter, phone calls he took in the hallway, the sudden extra hours billed to clients who never called our home phone. I copied down dates and times, saving them in a hidden folder in my desk drawer. Every betrayal, no matter how small, became part of the story I was building. At night, while he slept peacefully beside me, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, rehearsing conversations in my head. Sometimes I imagined screaming at him, throwing the truth in his face until he had no choice but to admit it. Other times, I pictured myself walking away silently, leaving him to wonder when and how he had lost me. But deep inside, I knew this was bigger than a fight between a husband and wife. This was about reclaiming my dignity, my identity. Riley's presence in our lives wasn't just about another woman. She represented everything I had been, denied confidence, ambition, recognition, and I couldn't let her walk away with both my husband and my son. One afternoon, while Aaron was at work, I visited an old friend, Daniel. He had studied law with Aaron years ago. But unlike Aaron, he had built his career with integrity. When I told him everything, my voice shaking, he listened quietly, his expression serious. "Savannah," he finally said, "you need to decide what you want. Do you want to save this marriage, or do you want to save yourself? Because you may not be able to do both." His words hit me like a storm. Save myself. For years, I had put Aaron first, our marriage first, his success first. Where in that equation had I ever saved myself? That night, I watched Aaron from across the dinner table. He smiled, told me about a new case, and spoke Riley's name with admiration. He didn't even notice the way my hands tightened around the fork, the way my eyes burned with anger. He thought I was still the same Savannah who would swallow every hurt in silence. But he was wrong. I was learning. Slowly, quietly, but surely, I was learning how to fight back. In my journal I wrote, "The strongest battles are fought in silence, and when the time comes, silence will speak louder than words." Weeks passed, and the mask I wore grew heavier. Aaron seemed convinced by my silence, believing I either didn't know or didn't care. But underneath, I was a volcano, storing every tremor, waiting for the moment to erupt. My journal had become my weapon. Every entry was dated, timed, and written with precision. His late-night absences, Riley's frequent calls, the unexplained charges on his credit card, everything was recorded. I had evidence, not just of infidelity, but of neglect, of betrayal, of the emotional wounds he had carved into me day by day. One Saturday, Aaron suggested we attend a firm dinner together. It had been months since he had asked me to join him at any professional event. And though suspicion prickled at me, I agreed. I wanted to see Riley face to face, in public, where pretense ruled and masks could slip. The night of the dinner, I wore a deep blue dress I hadn't touched in years. As I looked in the mirror, I almost didn't recognize myself. My eyes held fire again, my shoulders squared with a strength I had thought long lost. When we arrived, the room was buzzing with chatter and clinking glasses. Erin, ever the charismatic attorney, worked the crowd with ease. And then she appeared dryly. She was stunning, confident, and when her eyes met mine, I saw the flicker of something unexpected. Not pity, not guilt, but challenge. She walked over, her smile sharp. "Savannah," she said smoothly, "it's so nice to finally see you at one of these events." "Finally," I repeated, letting the word hang heavy between us. "Yes, I suppose it has been long overdue." Aaron quickly jumped in, sensing the tension. But I didn't let my gaze waver from Riley's. In that moment, I drew an invisible line in the sand. She might have stolen my husband's attention, but she wouldn't steal my courage. Throughout the evening, I watched them carefully. The way Erin leaned in when she spoke, the way her hand lingered on his arm, the way they exchanged glances as though they shared secrets no one else could hear. And yet, every time Riley looked at me, I met her gaze head-on, unflinching. It was a silent war, fought with smiles and subtle jabs, but a war nonetheless. When we returned home, Erin praised me for playing nice. I laughed. The sound hollow, even to my own ears. "Don't mistake composure for ignorance, Aaron," I said softly, almost like a warning. He froze for a moment, then brushed it off, heading to bed. But I saw the way his shoulders stiffened, the way unease crept into his expression. For the first time, he sensed I was no longer the docile wife he had relied upon. That night, I wrote in my journal, "Every war needs strategy. Tonight was reconnaissance. The real battle hasn't even begun." After the dinner, something in Aaron shifted. He wasn't as carefree as before. He noticed when I stayed silent too long, when I lingered on his phone a second too much, when I met Riley's name with a measured expression, instead of hurt. My composure unsettled him more than my tears ever had. I saw it in the way he hesitated before kissing me goodbye, in the way he avoided eye contact when he returned late at night. He knew I was onto him, though he didn't know how much. I let him live in that uncertainty. Meanwhile, I continued building my case. I visited Daniel again, this time bringing copies of the receipts, the hotel record I had managed to photograph, and notes from months of observations. He studied them carefully and said, "Savannah, this is more than enough to take to court. But you need to decide when to strike. I nodded. Timing was everything. If I moved too soon, Aaron would twist the truth, the way he always did in court. But if I waited too long, I risked losing myself in the pain. One evening, while Aaron was in the shower, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. The name glowed bright. Riley. Against the pounding of my heart, I answered. Her voice was light, teasing. I miss you already. Last night was. She stopped abruptly when she heard my silence. This isn't Aaron, is it? No, I said, my voice steady. It's his wife. A pause. Then a soft, unapologetic laugh. Well, I guess now you know what you've been pretending not to see. My hand shook, but my voice didn't. Pretending? No, Riley. I've been documenting. Her laugh faltered, and I ended the call before she could respond. Aaron came out minutes later, a towel around his shoulders, and I sat there staring at him, wondering if he realized how fragile his world had become. He noticed the look in my eyes, and for the first time in years, he seemed unsure of himself. That night, I didn't sleep. I replayed Riley's words over and over. She thought she had won, that my silence was weakness. She didn't realize silence can be sharper than a blade. At dawn, I stood by the window, watching the city wake up. I whispered to myself, he built his life on arguments and evidence. Fine, I'll beat him at his own game. When Aaron stirred awake, he looked at me strangely. You're up early, he murmured. I smiled faintly. Just thinking, I replied. He didn't ask what about. Maybe he was afraid of the answer. In my journal, I wrote, a liar's greatest fear is not being caught. It's being out. And Aaron is about to learn that lesson the hard way. The morning after Riley's call, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The storm inside had quieted, not because the pain was gone, but because I finally understood what I had to do. Aaron left for work, unaware that each step he took away from me was bringing him closer to his own downfall. I spent the day organizing my evidence, turning my scattered notes into a timeline so clear that even Aaron, the brilliant lawyer, wouldn't be able to twist it. Daniel had warned me, be ready for him to fight back. He's ruthless when cornered. But I wasn't afraid anymore. For once, the truth was on my side. That evening, I decided to test Aaron. When he walked through the door, exhausted and carrying the faint smell of Riley's perfume, I greeted him with a smile. How was your day? I asked sweetly. He blinked, surprised. Busy. Long meetings. I tilted my head. At the Ritz Hotel again. The color drained from his face before he recovered, forcing a laugh. What makes you say that? Just a guess, I said lightly, turning back to the stove. But I saw the way his jaw tightened, the flicker of panic he tried to mask. That small crack in his armor gave me strength. Later that night, as he showered, I slipped his briefcase open. Inside was a file. Riley's name, printed boldly on the front. Contracts, partnership agreements, and handwritten notes that blurred the lines between business and something far more personal. I photographed every page with steady hands. When he emerged, I was calmly reading a book, as if nothing had happened. Over the next few days, I kept my demeanor unchanged, gentle smiles, polite conversation, the illusion of normalcy. But Aaron grew restless. He sensed something off, though he couldn't pinpoint it. His confidence wavered, and with it, Riley's boldness seemed to increase. She called more often, sometimes when I was right beside him. I watched him lie effortlessly, yet each lie only added to the arsenal I was building. Finally, Daniel set a date. We'll file the case next week, he said. My hands trembled when I signed the papers, not from fear, but from the weight of the choice I was making. I wasn't just ending a marriage. I was reclaiming my life. That night, I stood in front of the mirror and whispered to my reflection, you are not weak. You are not invisible. You are not just Aaron's wife. You are Savannah, and this is your story. When I joined Aaron in bed, he reached for me out of habit. For the first time, I didn't flinch or freeze, I simply turned away. My silence, speaking volumes. In my journal, I wrote, the tide is turning. Soon, he will face the truth. And when he does, I will stand taller than ever before. The day Daniel filed the case was the day my world shifted from silence to action. I walked out of his office with the stamped papers in my hand, the crisp weight of them grounding me in reality. This wasn't just a threat anymore, it was official. My marriage, my pain, my betrayal, all reduced to legal documents. Yet strangely, I didn't feel broken. I felt powerful. That evening, when Aaron came home, I was waiting. I had set the dining table perfectly. Candles flickering. Dinner hot on the stove. He looked surprised, almost relieved, as if maybe the distance between us was finally closing. This looks nice, he said cautiously, loosening his tie. I smiled, a calmness in my eyes he didn't understand. I thought we should enjoy one last peaceful dinner before things get complicated. His fork froze halfway to his mouth. What do you mean? I slid the envelope across the table. Open it. His hands hesitated before tearing it open, scanning the words. His face darkened, jaw tightening as he read the lawsuit. You're suing me. For infidelity. For mental cruelty. His voice rose, but I remained composed. Yes, Aaron. For every lie you told, every night you left me waiting, every piece of myself I lost because of you. He slammed the papers down. Do you know what you're doing? Do you know who I am? I don't lose cases, Savannah. I leaned forward, my voice low but steady. Then think of this as the first time. Because this time, the evidence is against you. And I learned from the best you. For the first time since I'd known him. Aaron had no immediate retort. His eyes flickered with rage, but also with fear. He pushed away from the table, pacing like a caged animal. Riley will stand by me, he muttered. I almost laughed. Then she can stand beside you in court, too. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with all the words we would never take back. After he stormed out of the apartment, slamming the door so hard the candles flickered out, I sat quietly in the dark. My hands shook, not from regret, but from the adrenaline of finally speaking the truth. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I didn't hope. I simply wrote in my journal, the first strike has been made. The battlefield is set. And this time, I am not afraid of the fight. The days after serving Aaron, the papers were filled with silence thick. Enough to suffocate. He stopped trying to charm me, stopped pretending nothing was wrong. Instead, he moved through the apartment like a stranger. His eyes sharp, his words clipped. When he wasn't home, I imagined him strategizing with Riley, drafting a defense, twisting the truth into something unrecognizable. That was his gift, after all, making lies sound like gospel. But this time, I had my own strategy. Daniel guided me through every step. He arranged meetings with investigators who could verify hotel records, collect witness statements, and trace financial inconsistencies. Each new piece of evidence felt like a brick building the wall between Aaron and me, but also, like armor protecting me from the man I once loved. Aaron tried to intimidate me at first. Late one night, he walked into the living room where I was writing in my journal. He stood over me, his presence heavy. You really think you can destroy me in court? Savannah, I win because I'm smarter, stronger. I closed my journal slowly and looked him in the eye. No, Aaron, you win because no one ever challenged you. But I'm not scared anymore, he sneered. But I saw the flicker of doubt in his eyes before he turned away. The pretrial hearing arrived quickly. I sat in the courtroom, my palms damp, my heart pounding. Aaron entered in his tailored suit, Riley by his side. She didn't even try to hide anymore. Her confidence radiated. But beneath it, I caught the same arrogance that fueled Aaron, the belief that they were untouchable. When the judge asked for preliminary evidence, Daniel presented the timeline I had built, the photographs, the receipts, the phone logs. Aaron's lawyer objected, dismissing them as circumstantial, but the judge allowed most of it to stand. Aaron glanced at me across the room, his jaw clenched, his eyes burning with fury. For the first time, I didn't look away. After the hearing, Riley brushed past me in the hallway. Her perfume, strong and deliberate. You won't win, she whispered sharply. He's mine now. I smiled faintly. Then you can have him. I'm not fighting for Aaron. I'm fighting for me. Her smirk faltered. Just for a second, and I walked away without waiting for her response. That night, when I returned home alone, I lit a single candle and sat in the quiet. I didn't feel like a victim anymore. I felt like a woman who had drawn her line in the sand and dared them to cross it. In my journal, I wrote, the courtroom is his battlefield, but truth is mine. And in the court of shadows, even the brightest lies eventually burn out. The days after serving Aaron, the papers were filled with silence thick, enough to suffocate. He stopped trying to charm me, stopped pretending nothing was wrong. Instead, he moved through the apartment like a stranger. His eyes sharp, his words clipped. When he wasn't home, I imagined him strategizing with Riley, drafting a defense, twisting the truth into something unrecognizable. That was his gift, after all, making lies sound like gospel. But this time, I had my own strategy. Daniel guided me through every step. He arranged meetings with investigators who could verify hotel records, collect witness statements, and trace financial inconsistencies. Each new piece of evidence felt like a brick building the wall between Aaron and me, but also like armor protecting me from the man I once loved. Aaron tried to intimidate me at first. Late one night, he walked into the living room where I was writing in my journal. He stood over me, his presence heavy. You really think you can destroy me in court? Savannah, I win because I'm smarter, stronger. I closed my journal slowly and looked him in the eye. No, Aaron. You win because no one ever challenged you. But I'm not scared anymore, he sneered. But I saw the flicker of doubt in his eyes before he turned away. The pretrial hearing arrived quickly. I sat in the courtroom, my palms damp, my heart pounding. Aaron entered in his tailored suit, Riley by his side. She didn't even try to hide anymore. Her confidence radiated, but beneath it, I caught the same arrogance that fueled Aaron, the belief that they were untouchable. When the judge asked for preliminary evidence, Daniel presented the timeline I had built, the photographs, the receipts, the phone logs. Aaron's lawyer objected, dismissing them as circumstantial, but the judge allowed most of it to stand. Aaron glanced at me across the room, his jaw clenched, his eyes burning with fury. For the first time, I didn't look away. After the hearing, Riley brushed past me in the hallway, her perfume strong and deliberate. "You won't win," she whispered sharply. "He's mine now." I smiled faintly. "Then you can have him." "I'm not fighting for Aaron, I'm fighting for me." Her smirk faltered. Just for a second, and I walked away without waiting for her response. That night, when I returned home alone, I lit a single candle and sat in the quiet. I didn't feel like a victim anymore. I felt like a woman who had drawn her line in the sand and dared them to cross it. In my journal, I wrote, "The courtroom is his battlefield, but truth is mine. And in the court of shadows, even the brightest lies eventually burn out." As the trial date approached, Aaron's perfect facade began to crack. He still dressed sharply, still spoke with that smooth authority that once charmed me. But behind closed doors, he was restless, agitated, snapping at small inconveniences. Riley's presence became more visible, answering his calls at odd hours, arriving at the courthouse as though she belonged by his side. But beneath her polished confidence, I saw something else, fear. It was in the way her eyes darted whenever Daniel mentioned subpoenas, in the way she gripped Aaron's arm a little too tightly when the judge allowed more of my evidence. They weren't as invincible as they wanted the world to believe. Meanwhile, I grew stronger. Each appearance in court made me steadier, my voice clearer. When the judge asked me to recount the strain of Aaron's late nights and absences, I spoke with calm precision. I didn't cry. I didn't break. I laid bare the truth like an unpolished stone, ugly, but undeniable. Aaron tried to object, tried to twist my words, but every time he opened his mouth, I could see the frustration simmering when the judge refused to be swayed by theatrics. One afternoon after a long session, Aaron cornered me in the courthouse hallway. His smile was cold, practiced. "You're embarrassing yourself, Savannah. You think the world believes you. They see a bitter wife trying to ruin her husband." I met his gaze evenly. "No, Aaron, they see a woman who finally stopped protecting a liar." His jaw tightened. And for a moment, the mask slipped. I saw fear there, raw, unguarded. Riley appeared at his side then, tugging at his sleeve, whispering something sharp. He let her pull him away, but not before throwing me a look that promised the battle wasn't over. That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed the exchange in my head. The way Riley clung to him, as if holding him together. For years, I thought I was the weak one in this marriage. Now I realized, Aaron had always needed someone to prop him up, to validate his power. Without that, he was just a man terrified of losing control. I sat at my desk and opened my journal. His mask is falling, piece by piece, and when it finally shatters, he'll have nothing left to hide behind. But I will still be standing. Closing the book, I whispered into the dark room. "You underestimated me, Aaron. That was your first mistake. Believing I'd stay silent was your last." The courtroom felt heavier with each passing day, as though the walls themselves absorbed the lies and truths flung across the space. Aaron's lawyer fought viciously, objecting at every turn, trying to paint me as unstable, bitter, vindictive. But Daniel countered calmly, presenting receipts, photographs, phone logs, and testimony that couldn't be ignored. Each time a piece of evidence landed, I watched Aaron's face tighten, Riley's polished calm slipping just a fraction. One afternoon, the judge allowed surveillance footage into the recorder, grainy clip of Aaron and Riley entering a hotel together, hand in hand. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Aaron's lawyer tried to object, but the damage was done. Aaron's mask cracked wide open, and for the first time, I saw shame flicker across his face. Riley shifted uncomfortably beside him, her jaw tight. Outside the courtroom, reporters hovered, eager for a headline. Aaron barked at them, but his irritation only fueled their curiosity. I slipped past quietly, unnoticed, my strength drawn not from spectacle but from truth. That evening, Aaron stormed into the apartment, slamming doors, pacing like a predator in a cage. "Do you realize what you've done?" he shouted. "You're ruining my career, my reputation, everything I've built." I looked at him calmly. "You ruined it yourself, Aaron. I just stopped covering for you." His rage faltered at my composure. He stared at me, breathing hard, as though seeing me for the first time. "You're not the same woman I married," he said bitterly. "No, I agreed softly. I finally remembered who I was, before you tried to erase me. The fight drained out of him then, replaced by something raw. For a brief moment, I almost pitied him. But pity was what had kept me silent for too long. That night, I wrote in my journal, he is unraveling. Every lie is a thread, and I've pulled too many for the fabric to hold. Soon, there will be nothing left but the truth he fears most. As I closed the journal, I realized I no longer feared the outcome of the trial. Whether I won or lost in the eyes of the law, I had already reclaimed myself. Aaron might still shout, Riley might still smirk, the world might still whisper, but I had faced the worst and survived. And that survival was victory enough. The trial entered its final stretch, and the weight of it pressed down on everyone. The gallery was fuller now, reporters scribbling notes, colleagues whispering in the back, as though Aaron's fall from grace had become a public spectacle. Aaron walked into the courtroom each day with his chin high. But his eyes betrayed him. They no longer carried the confidence of a man in control. They darted, restless, searching for a lifeline that wasn't there. Riley clung to him still, though her polished veneer was cracking. Her hair was perfectly styled, her dress immaculate, but her hands trembled when she adjusted her papers. And her smile looked painted on rather than natural. The prosecution unveiled financial records that tied Aaron directly to fraudulent claims within the firm. Expenses disguised as business that were anything but. Gasps echoed in the courtroom. Aaron's lawyer scrambled. But even his words sounded thinner now, weaker, like a man trying to patch a sinking ship with his bare hands. Aaron shot me a glare, so sharp it could have cut glass, but it only fueled me. I kept my gaze steady, calm. A quiet defiance that told him his intimidation no longer had power. During a recess, Riley approached me in the hallway. Her face pale, her voice hushed. "Do you have any idea what you're doing?" she hissed. "You'll ruin him. You'll ruin us both." I studied her for a long moment before answering. "No, Riley. He ruined himself. I'm just refusing to cover the wreckage." She faltered, her lips parting as if to argue. But nothing came. She turned sharply, heels clicking against the floor, as she disappeared back into the courtroom. That night, Aaron didn't come home. I sat alone in the apartment, the silence no longer suffocating, but liberating. I realized then that the collapse wasn't just happening in the courtroom, it was happening in his soul, in his carefully constructed world. And I didn't need to lift a finger. He was undoing himself. I opened my journal and wrote, "A liar can stand only so long before the weight of his lies crushes him. The collapse has begun, and when it's over, I will walk away from the ruins without looking back." Closing the journal, I whispered to the empty room, "You thought you owned me, Aaron, but now you've lost yourself." The courtroom buzzed louder than ever the next morning. Reporters shoved microphones into every corner, headlines already being drafted in their minds. Star attorney on the brink. Aaron arrived late, his suit wrinkled, his tie askew, as though the mirror no longer offered him comfort. When he sat down, he didn't even look at Riley. She whispered something, trying to steady him, but he shook her hand off like an annoyance. The prosecution revealed phone records, a chain of late-night conversations between Aaron and Riley that coincided with questionable withdrawals from client accounts. Riley blanched, her composure breaking for the first time. "Objection." Aaron's lawyer barked, but his voice cracked. The judge overruled without hesitation. I watched, heart pounding, as the pieces of Aaron's empire crumbled in real time. Once, I would have been terrified to see him fall apart, afraid of what that meant for my own future. Now, all I felt was relief. Aaron took the stand that afternoon. His jaw was set, his tone forceful, but cracks laced through his testimony. "My wife is exaggerating. She's angry, vindictive. Riley is just a colleague. These accusations are baseless." His words tried to sound like truth, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. When it was my lawyer's turn, he asked simply, "Mr. Thompson, do you love your wife?" The question hung in the air like a blade. Aaron shifted uncomfortably. "Of course I do." "Then why?" My lawyer pressed, sliding a glossy photo across the desk. "Were you seen entering a hotel at midnight with Ms. Riley Bennett?" The photo was undeniable. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Aaron's face drained of color. Riley buried her head in her hands. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating, and for the first time in years, Aaron didn't have an answer. He stammered, that was work. "We had a client." The judge raised a hand. "Enough, Mr. Thompson." Aaron collapsed back into his chair, sweat glistening on his forehead. The mask had finally slipped. My chest tightened, but not from pain. From victory, the breaking point had arrived, and Aaron's carefully crafted facade had shattered into pieces for the world to see. As the gavel struck to end the day's session, I closed my eyes and thought, this is no longer about surviving him. It's about outlasting him. The morning air outside the courthouse was sharp, the kind that cut right through nerves and forced the truth into the open. When Riley stepped out of the black car, flashes exploded from every angle. Cameras clicked. Reporters shouted her name. And for the first time, she didn't smile. Her confidence had dimmed, her eyes darting as if searching for an escape. Inside, the prosecution called her to the stand. She walked slowly, heels tapping like a countdown to her own destruction. She tried to keep her chin high, but I could see the tremor in her hands as she placed them on the witness table. "Ms. Bennett," the prosecutor began. "Can you confirm the extent of your relationship with Mr. Thompson?" Riley hesitated, her throat tightening. We were colleagues. Just colleagues." The prosecutor slid forward a stack of documents, hotel bills, call logs, text messages. Riley's eyes widened. The room leaned forward, waiting. Finally, her shoulders slumped. "No," she whispered. The sound was so faint, yet it cracked the air like thunder. Gasps echoed. Aaron's face hardened, fury in his eyes. "We were more than colleagues," Riley continued, her voice breaking. "I didn't mean for it to go this far, but it did, and he let it." The admission sent a ripple through the courtroom. Aaron shot up from his chair. "Riley, don't do this." But the judge's gavel slammed. "Order." Riley's hands covered her face as tears spilled through her fingers. The woman who once walked into my home with smug laughter now trembled under the weight of her own choices. I felt no triumph, no gloating, only clarity. The truth wasn't mine to prove anymore, it was theirs to confess. Aaron sat back down, defeated, while Riley's sobs filled the silence. In that moment, I realized the affair had already devoured them both long before I stepped into court. This was not just Riley's fall. It was Aaron's too. And I was finally free of the shadows they cast. The courtroom felt heavier than ever. After Riley's confession, Aaron looked like a man cornered, stripped of every weapon he once carried. His lawyer made one last desperate attempt. "Your Honor, my client's personal life may have flaws, but that does not prove he inflicted harm on his wife, Mrs. Thompson, is exaggerating her pain to win sympathy." The words stabbed at me, but I didn't flinch. The prosecutor rose calmly. "Exaggeration. Let us consider the timeline. Years of neglect, countless late-night calls, financial mismanagement tied to his partner. This is not exaggeration, it's abandonment. It is betrayal." The judge's eyes narrowed. "Mr. Thompson, do you wish to add anything before this court proceeds?" Aaron stood, straightening his tie as if that could hold his world together. His voice cracked. "I made mistakes. But I never stopped caring for Savannah. I thought she would understand." A bitter laugh escaped me before I could stop it. "Understand what, Aaron? That loyalty means nothing. That respect is optional." The judge banged the gavel, silencing us, but the damage was done. Everyone had heard the truth, not from lawyers, not from papers, but from our own mouths. Aaron sank back into his chair, his head in his hands. For a man who once argued with brilliance, there was nothing left to say. Riley avoided his eyes completely. Her earlier confession, sealing both their fates. My lawyer leaned closer and whispered, "This is over. He's lost." I nodded, feeling the weight lift off me, slowly but surely. The judge announced the final deliberation would come the next morning. The courtroom emptied, reporters flooding the steps outside, shouting questions neither Aaron nor Riley could answer. As I walked past the cameras, I held my head high. Not as a victim, but as a woman who had faced the storm and refused to drown. Tonight would be the last night I spent tied to Aaron's shadow. Tomorrow, the world would know the truth, not just about him, but about me too. The morning sun filtered through the courthouse windows, casting long shadows across the room. It was the day of judgment. Everyone felt it. The gallery was packed, reporters poised with pens and cameras. Waiting for the headline moment, I sat calmly, hands folded in my lap. While Aaron looked like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes were bloodshot, his suit hanging loose as though it no longer belonged to him. Riley sat 2 rows behind, pale and broken, her earlier arrogance gone. The judge entered, and silence swept the room. My heart raced, but I steadied my breath. This wasn't fear, it was anticipation. The judge's voice was firm, deliberate. "This court has reviewed the testimonies, the evidence, and the conduct of both parties." Aaron shifted, gripping the edge of the table. "It is clear that Mr. Thompson breached the trust fundamental to marriage. His actions, both personal and financial, have caused undeniable harm to Mrs. Thompson." The words hit Aaron like a blow. His shoulders slumped, head bowed. The judge continued, "Therefore, this court grants Mrs. Thompson the divorce she seeks, along with restitution, for damages caused by emotional distress and negligence." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Cameras flashed wildly. My chest tightened, not with sadness, but with relief so profound it felt like breathing for the first time. Aaron's lawyer slumped back, defeated. Riley buried her face in her hands, silent tears rolling. Aaron turned to me, his lips trembling as if to speak, but no words came. For once, the man who always had something to say was speechless. I stood, my lawyer at my side, and nodded respectfully to the judge. My legs felt light, as though they no longer carried the weight of years of silence. Walking out of that courtroom, the world outside exploded with noise, reporters calling my name. Questions flying. "Savannah, how do you feel? Do you have a message for other women?" I paused only for a moment, then answered clearly, my voice steady. Yes, don't let silence bury you. Speak, even if your voice shakes, because your truth is stronger than their lies. With that, I walked down the courthouse steps, into the blazing light of freedom. Weeks passed after the verdict, yet the echo of the gavel still lingered in my mind. The sound had marked the end of one life, and the birth of another. The papers called it a landmark case. My name splashed across headlines I never imagined I would read. But beyond the noise, beyond the cameras and reporters, there was just me, Savannah Thompson, no longer bound by a name that wasn't mine to carry anymore. I moved into a small apartment overlooking the Hudson River. It wasn't grand, not like the townhouse Aaron and I once shared, but it was mine. Every corner reflected choices I made, my books stacked by the window, my paintings on the wall, fresh flowers on the table each week. It was freedom painted in ordinary colors, and it felt beautiful. One evening, I sat on the balcony watching the city lights flicker like stars that had fallen to earth. My phone buzzed. It was Victor, my old college friend who had stood by me through the trial. How's the new place? He asked. I smiled, letting the breeze carry my answer. It feels like home. We spoke for hours, about everything and nothing, and for the first time in years, the conversation wasn't about pain or betrayal, it was about dreams, plans, and possibility. At night, I wrote in my journal again, but the words were different now, no longer cries of despair, but affirmations. I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. Sometimes I thought of Aaron and Riley not with anger, not with longing, but with a quiet detachment. They had written themselves out of my story. I wished them nothing, not even hate. That was their burden to carry, not mine. One Saturday morning, I joined a support group for women who had faced betrayal and abuse. Standing there, telling my story, I saw my reflection in their eyes, not as a victim, but as proof that survival could lead to strength. Your voice saved you, one woman said after the session. And now it's helping us too. That night, walking home under the city lights, I felt an overwhelming truth settle inside me. My life was no longer about what I lost. It was about what I was building. And though the road ahead was uncertain, I wasn't afraid. For the first time, I belonged wholly to myself. The past was closed. The future was wide open. The courthouse, the cameras, the whispers, all of it faded into the background of memory. Months had passed, and life had stitched itself back together, not seamlessly, but with the beauty of scars that told a story of survival. One late afternoon, I returned to the Riverside Park, where Aaron and I once argued. The place where silence between us had felt louder than words. Now, as I walked along the water, the city skyline, burning gold in the sunset, I felt no shadow trailing behind me, just my own steady footsteps. I sat on a bench, notebook in hand, and wrote, "Freedom isn't given, it's claimed." And I claimed mine. The words flowed without hesitation, without the weight of fear. Nearby, children laughed, their voices ringing like music. A couple walked by hand in hand. For a moment, I thought of what I had once dreamed marriage would be, and instead of bitterness, I smiled. Some dreams die, but new ones are born in their place. My phone rang. It was Victor again. "Dinner?" he asked simply. I hesitated, not from fear, but from wonder. My life no longer revolved around someone else's needs, yet the possibility of letting someone in again felt right. "Yes," I answered. After the call, I stayed a while longer, watching the river move, endless and unbroken. Life was like that, sometimes stormy, sometimes calm, always moving forward. I closed my notebook and stood, feeling taller, lighter. I wasn't Savannah Thompson anymore. I was just Savannah, stronger, wiser, unafraid. As I walked away from the river, the city lights flickering to life behind me, I whispered a final goodbye to the woman I had been, and a welcome to the woman I had become. This was not the end of my story. It was only the beginning.